He was in this moment talking with Amy, and his 5-year-old son came downstairs, and he just raised his voice. He said, "Dad, you need to stop. The way that you're talking to mom is making her cry, and it's making the kids scared." Oh. And he just realized, it's like, maybe the way that I am isn't good. You've heard the line, "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me." I'm not sure who said that, but I'm pretty sure the guy wasn't married. I mean, the Bible talks a lot about the power of our tongue. In fact, it says that the tongue can bring the power of life or death. And all too often, in an attempt to be honest with our spouse, we can bring death into the marriage. But it begs the question, okay, well, where's the line between being authentic and then pointing out those great growth opportunities that our spouse has, that we see and that we notice? Today, we're going to find out why highly happy couples don't always tell it like it is. Man, these secrets, what's been great about these secrets, Shaunti, is how simple they are to execute, but yet it does take a significant mind shift for most of them,
It's that whole being purposeful, which is, it's easier just to have inertia.
Yes, that's right. It is easier just to drift. It's easier to just kind of go to default. And I think especially with the one we're going to talk about today, it does take a lot of intentionality and really working against how we're normally wired. I've heard it said before that the first thing to go in marriage is politeness. And you discovered statistically, like I've heard that as a phrase, but actually you discovered statistically that it is absolutely true.
It is absolutely true. The one of the ways that we saw this actually was not even in the stats for the Happy Marriages study, but our study for the 30-Day Kindness Challenge. Because one of the things in the 30-Day Kindness Challenge was we were telling people, we're going to do this intervention with you for 30 days, right? And you're not going to say anything negative about your spouse, either to them or about them to somebody else. You're going to look for things to praise, and you're going to do these actions of generosity every day, like just simple stuff,
right?
Every day. And so at the beginning, one of the things that we have done since is people will take an assessment to tell them, where am I starting? And we kind of did it tricky. And
sneaky.
So we were a little bit sneaky. We were being a bit sneaky. And so at the beginning, when we asked them, just kind of self-rate their kindness, their tone of voice, general, whatever. And people will recognize, sometimes I'm having a bad day and I'm kind of impatient with a cashier. Okay, whatever. But, I kind of give myself an 8 out of 10. And then we take those exact same measures and we say, okay, now answer those questions about how you relate to your spouse.
Wow.
And it's like, oof.
So people were honest, though? Because I could see people easily just going, I think I'm pretty kind to my spouse.
Well, once you're actually into the assessment and the questions are designed so that you can't just answer like general. It's like really specific. Like, what is your tone of voice when you're irritated? Like that kind of thing, right? So either you lie to yourself or you don't, and it's just between you and you, right? Like this is just an anonymous thing in an assessment telling you where you need to start. And but we found that there was that oof moment where people recognized, you know what, I am speaking to that cashier, the person at my kid's school, my colleagues at work way more kindly than I'm speaking to my spouse.
But isn't there something inside all of us that go, but isn't that okay? I mean, isn't marriage a place where I can be candid? I can be myself. I can tell you what's really going on in my mind. I can tell you like it is, right? I can just be authentic with what I'm feeling in the moment. I mean, after all, in Genesis, it talks about we can be naked and unashamed. So I can just with our spouse. So I'm just going to let everything hang out, whether that's my bad tone, I'm irritated, I'm short. My spouse should be able to handle that.
Yep. And the thing that we all think to ourselves, and a lot of people place a high value on, is being brutally honest.
Right.
Right? Like it's important in marriage to be able to be honest. And here's what we found with the happy couples. And this was an oof for me.
Okay.
once
I keep imagining like this comic book where oof is, but it's like an old Batman comic or something like that. Oof.
Over my head.
That's what if people watching YouTube, that's what we need, the oof right over Shaunti's head.
And honestly, somebody is actually going to do that now, right? Okay. But here is what the happy couple's secret was, is they were absolutely honest.
Okay.
and they weren't brutal.
Huh. That's a good distinction. I mean, that's a big distinction.
Oh, yeah. They were. And here's the thing that a lot of the happy couples in the study group, some of them, this was just their natural personality, but most of the time it had become a purposeful thing where they basically said, I need to be more kind. Like if I'm going to be kind to anyone, I'm going to be kind with my spouse, right? I'm going to be more purposeful about having a tone of voice that is respectful instead of just respectful. Because if you think about it, like people are like, I'm just being me, right? Well, are you being you at work? Like, are you being, are you speaking to that way to somebody you're like your boss?
I don't like the people I work with. So.
Well, there you go. Okay. All the people in the booth are like, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. But that's the thing. We have to be honest about the fact that we're often saying, I just want to be honest. No, you want to be brutally honest. And that is not what the happy couples did.
And I felt a little bit of this when we were doing in episode 6, where we talked about bossing our feelings around, is that there was a part of me that was going, a little bit of angst going, but I want to be authentic. I want to be real with what I'm feeling right now in this moment. And what should I do with these feelings? What should I do? I am feeling short right now. I'm feeling irritable right now. Isn't it okay where I can express this stuff honestly, openly? I thought marriage might be that place for me.
Well, and we talked about in the Boss Your Feelings Around episode, we mentioned that this is one of those things where, okay, my feelings either boss me around or I boss them around. Like it's one of those two things. So which side of the line are you on?
Yeah.
Here's what we always tell people when we're doing a marriage event, when Jeff and I are talking about this topic, and we get anonymous questions, and that is often an anonymous question.
People are asking, but I want to be authentic.
But I want to be authentic. And shouldn't marriage be the place that I can just let it all hang out?
Yeah.
And the reality is, this is what we generally tend to say, is look, you don't have to change anything based on what we said. Right? Like, I'm not telling you what to do because different people are going to have different applications. That's fine.
Right.
But it's kind of like Dr. Phil. How's that working for you? Right? Like, you may wish it worked that way in marriage, that you could just let it all hang out and say whatever you want to your spouse.
Right.
And in whatever tone you want, and that they should, in air quotes, be able to handle that. And you may wish that it worked that way. But if it doesn't, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
Right. It's really about being a bit realistic.
Right. Because I think we've all had that thought of, in marriage, I can just be who I am. You can either take it or leave it, but that's who you married. Like, that's who you got. And I'm married to somebody who can be on the brutal side of honest, can be more brutal. Jen, if she were here, she would say, yeah.
You guys talk about this in your events too.
We do. And she says she's been accused many times of just not having a great filter. Like, she just blurts it out. And often it does feel a little bit like your own oof that you get that. And I've had moments where it's like my wittiness, my sarcasm. I often said that sarcasm is my love language. I love to give it out. I love to be sarcastic. I was on an elevator with one of my bosses at a former job, and as we were going up, she got on the elevator, then she got off the elevator, then she got back on the elevator, and I was like, "Oh, what? Early on Alzheimer's?"
Oh,
and you just go.
Now you need the oof over your head.
And I'm, and then she kind of looked at me and then didn't and was gracious in that moment, because she could have just said, "You're fired," which is what she should have said. But I was like this young 30-year-old guy, and it's like, just because that's my natural bent doesn't mean that all these thoughts need to be expressed.
Yep.
And what about you, Shaunti? I would imagine, like, you're married to a lawyer. He is a Harvard-trained lawyer. He's probably trained in debate. He's probably quick on his feet. Is he the kind that would be unfiltered and just kind of let it all hang out?
I hate to tell you, but no, it's me. It's more, I'm the strong personality. I'm more like Jen, your wife, where it's not necessarily that I let it all hang out, because this is one of those things that I've tried to learn over the years, but I definitely used to. And saw that it didn't actually go so well. Yeah,
you started asking yourself, how's that working for us? Yeah,
exactly. So, but honestly, Jeff put up with a lot.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he is very good at just being calm and taking it and kind of not responding. But yeah, there was a lot of oofs, over his head, I'm sure.
One of our dear friends, Ed and Namy, they're Weekend Remember speakers and have worked with FamilyLife. You know them well.
They're awesome.
Yeah, and Ed, they'll tell the story where Ed was talking to his wife Amy, and Ed is one of those guys that just tells it like it is. He likes to be brutally honest. He likes to tell you in the moment. He grew up in a home where conflict, if it wasn't handled right then in that moment, it wasn't handled, and so he didn't like it when it felt like there was this angst, and when things got left undone, the loop was still open. So it's like you deal with it right then, right in the moment, and you just talk, and you're just talking. And what he wasn't
whatever direct a tone of voice as you need to.
And we often don't have a mirror. I always wonder what it would be like is if somebody would just record us at home. And then would play back the game film. And what we would end up seeing in ourselves that we go, oh, that's how I am? So, well, if we don't have a camera, you might as well just ask your kids. And what happened was he was in this moment talking with Amy, and his 5-year-old son came downstairs. And he said, Dad, and this wasn't a kid who talked hardly at all. And he just raised his voice. He said, Dad, you need to stop. The way that you're talking to Mom is making her cry, and it's making the kids scared. And you talk about putting the brakes on. And he just realized, he's like, maybe the way that I am isn't good. Maybe the way that I am. And I don't think we ever question that.
This is just the way I am.
Right. Because we go, that's inauthentic. Yeah. Is that's being authentic? I was like, you married this person. You signed up for this. This is who I am. You need to take it or leave it. And he's sitting here going, well, if who I am is causing my wife to cry and the kids to get scared, maybe I need to change.
Yeah.
And I wonder if marriage is that place where God is giving us help to be a better version of ourselves.
Well, because let's just think about this for just a minute, right? You said, let's be naked and unashamed. Like, can I just come home, let it all hang out, whatever. Okay, remember, naked and unashamed in Genesis was before sin entered the world. And so our version of letting it all hang out, we have to recognize candidly, if I'm being really honest with myself, being honest, when I say I want to be my authentic self, what I'm actually saying is I want to be my sinful self. I want to be able to say those words that are festering and have that little mean bite to my voice to let you know how much you hurt me, rather than going, this is not who Jesus is trying to make out of me, right? Like, this is not the person that I'm supposed to be growing into. And so there is a truly big, this is a simple little secret. There is a big, huge spotlight that God uses and is putting on each one of us about, okay, this is where you're supposed to be changing to be more like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that process of sanctification, of actually growing into my authentic self in Christ, is what we want. And maybe marriage is that place. I think it was Martin Luther. I don't remember the exact quote, but just something about the fact that it's like marriage is that place where God allows us to grow up. He allows us to actually become the person that we're supposed to be like. And I think that's why the Bible has so much to say about the tongue and the power of the tongue.
Oh,
and so what you're saying in this secret, I just want to be clear, you're not saying that we're not supposed to be telling the truth.
Oh, yeah. Again,
we're not supposed to be
honest.
Being honest. It's just that we don't add that brutal to it.
Yeah, as you're honest, you are being far more attuned to how it is coming across.
Yeah.
And recognizing that whole analogy, and it's a bit stereotypical, of an analogy, but it's a good one of think of yourself as like a radio tower sending signals. And they go through the air. And of course, we have an enemy who's the prince of the power of the air, right? And they travel and they hit the eardrums of your spouse. And those signals may be received different than how you intend them. And of course, that can happen in anything.
Right.
But if you are not if you're not going, okay, Lord, I really want to be more the person you want me to be, regardless of how it impacts my spouse, knowing that it will impact my spouse well, that I need to be careful as I'm sending those signals. How is this going to be heard?
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to be, again, honest with ourselves about that.
Yeah. Because in marriage, I start realizing how much I don't really care about my spouse if I'm just saying I want to be my authentic, sinful self.
Yeah.
I just let my words go out. I'm just brutally honest. I just tell it like it is. And the Bible says, yeah, that often is a very foolish action. In fact, I like one of the verses where it talks about how in Proverbs 29:11, a fool gives full vent to his spirit. And that's that idea of sending. I'm going to send the signal out. I'm just going to say what I think. I'm just going to express my thought, whatever tone that I want to. I'm going to give a full vent to my spirit. The Bible says, you're a fool. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
How's that working for you?
Yep.
Whereas it says, but a wise man quietly holds it back. I think about in Proverbs 12:18, where it says, there's one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, which is such an incredible image. It's like I am poking my spouse with a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And we could go on and on. We could list a bunch of these verses in our show notes. So Proverbs 15's got like 4 of them, one right after the other. And I like in Proverbs 15:28, it says, the heart of the righteous ponders how to answer.
Yeah.
But the mouth of the wicked pours out evil things. So it's like, am I in a marriage where I'm pondering before, or am I just pouring out? Mm-hmm. It's like both can still bring forth the truth and honesty, but one's pondering it and one's just pouring it out, being brutally honest.
Being brutal, right? There are going to be some people who are listening to this, and I believe me, I understand because I've had to go through this myself, who are having to do maybe a little bit of grieving right now, because there is a recognition that comes upon you when you're like, you know what, I don't get to do everything that I want.
Wow. Which isn't that what sanctification is all about?
It is.
Where Paul says, the very things I want to do, I don't do. The very things I don't want to do, I do. But it's like, but deep down, I do really want to hurt my spouse in this moment.
Deep down, it's not even that I want to hurt my spouse, because I would never say if in a different moment, like right now, I would never say I want to hurt Jeff. Like, Of course not. However, in the moment, I do want to. I want to be at home. I want to be relaxed. I want to be in a place where I can let my hair down. I want to be in a place where I can make my mistakes and be loved anyway. All of that is fine. Like, yes, that is one of the things that ultimately marriage is designed to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that Jeff will love me anyway, even if I have the sword thrust through his heart.
Right.
But I have to recognize if it's a pattern where me letting my hair down is hurting him, then no, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And that is something that I'm called to know. You can't do what you want.
Right.
There is a grief there of, no, you are called to look out for the interests of others, not just yourselves.
Boy, that's good. And it's why James talks about how this tongue, this small thing, it's like a rudder, and it's directing our, it's coming from our heart, and we know that it's connected to our heart. Our tongue is right connected to our heart. It's coming out in either good or bad fruit. And James is like, listen, your tongue is it's like a fire. It set fires. Yeah. And I wonder how many of our homes actually feel like little places where like every room's got a little forest fire, and it takes a moment just to step back and even ask our spouse that honest question. How am I doing with this? Am I too brutal in my honesty? Yeah. That'd be a great honest question.
There's
just
a mirror
reflective.
right there.
Am I too brutal? And the flip side needs to be said, because I think for me, I can do this. I can be brutally honest without saying anything. Like the flip side is I don't tell the truth, right? And so I'm not being completely honest. I'm just being brutal in my silence. I'm just being. I'm not actually telling anything. I'm not telling the truth. But that is just as bad.
I am walking away.
I'm walking away, and when we keep it inside, like it can end up resulting in some of the same problems that we have in marriage. Well, I hope you've been enjoying this season of Married with Benefits, and it is super easy for you to support this podcast. All you really need to be able to do is press 2 buttons, like and subscribe. Leave a review, leave a comment. Let us know what you're leaning into, what's encouraging you, what you feel that is helping your marriage. We would love to hear those comments. So that's it. That's super easy, and it would help us out a lot. All right, back to the episode. So, Shaunti, with that, it's like, okay, here's the secret. And I like how you phrased it. Like the happiest couples are honest. They're just not brutal.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? If I'm realizing, man,
what do I do?
Yeah, I've been brutally honest. What are some steps that we can take in the right direction? I like how we do this at the end of every episode. Is like, what are the 3 or 4 things you can give me that I'm recognizing that pattern, but I want to actually be highly happy. So what is it that I can do in the moment that I'm feeling that?
Well, there is one thing that we've seen over and over, and this actually works when you look at like neuroscience and when we look at some of the data from some of the different studies that we've done. It's like this process, building a habit of interrupting yourself before you speak, right? Like everybody's parents told them when they were little, think before you speak, right? And I certainly had a hard time learning that one. But you've learned that, obviously, because you're a functioning adult, you're a functioning human, you know how to do this. And so it's time to put that hat back on, right? Like what you learned when you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Okay, put that hat back on. And basically the way to do that usually is to, in the moment when I am seeing that I want to be brutally honest and I am seeing that I want to say this thing or use this tone of voice or whatever it is, it's almost like calling a mental timeout and basically going, okay, think before I speak and figure out what my tone of voice is. Think about what I'm about to say. Does it have to be said in this way?
Yeah. And I like that image of timeout. I'm a big basketball fan. It's like you call a timeout when the momentum's going against you. It's like, so when the momentum is shifting in the game and you feel like, man, we're losing right now. And some of us need to realize that the difference between reacting and responding to our spouse or just telling it like it is about 5 seconds. Like we're not talking about something that's long. It's just call a quick mental timeout and go, is this the right time to say these words? Is this going to hit them at the right time? You know, it's like when Jen would say, as I come in from after a long day of work, or she's come in from a long day of work and we both come back and the first thing she says is, you know, man, I just can't believe how late you are. Or like she just adjusts, like something negative right from the beginning.
Yep.
Like, is this the right time or is this the right moment to say that?
This is a very common issue in marriage statistically, and I'm just going to say this out loud, is that the person who is the external processor, who tends to be the wife in many marriages, it's a neuroscience thing, but tends to be the one who thinks out loud, you know, basically thinking things through by talking it through, has to recognize this is a moment where I can probably put a sword through my husband really easily by, for example, Jeff will come home. He has a technology business that he's been working on for a number of years, and he'll come home with this great idea. And he'll explain, you know, we got this great idea and so said we could build it and blah, blah, blah. And he's just wanting to share the excitement. I instantly, my analytical hat goes on, you know, and I'm thinking, and I go, oh yeah, that is a good idea. But, you know, we should also think about this and we can't do it here. And, you know, we'd have to wait till November because, and he's like, you're just throwing a cold bucket of water on everything. And it's like this, there is in the desire to process out loud a real responsibility to take care with our spouse's heart. Yeah.
I love my wife, right? Every strength pushed too far becomes a weakness. And so it's like she would be right now nodding her head and she would probably say to the same thing. Like, we have a joke now in our family where we call Jen the dream killer because, you know, whether it's our kids or us, like Brantley's a lot like me, just has an idea every second and wants to just explode. So she'll talk about like, hey, next year as a family, we should all go to, you know, the Bahamas and do this and this and this and this. And Jen immediately is just going, well, we have this camp going on here and we got to save up for that. And she's just immediately thinking about the roadblocks, which aren't wrong. All of that would have to take place. But in the moment that your idea is just coming out, please don't drop an ice bucket challenge right on my idea.
I need to call Jen and we need to develop a support group for the dream killers.
Right.
We just do. Like Jen and I need to have a support group.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think in the moment when you're wanting to be brutally honest, just call a timeout and think about, is this the right time? Is this the right tone? I do like in your book here, you have this one quote from a lady where she's answering that question about, you know, is marriage a place where I can be just brutally honest with my spouse? And she's like, well, you should be able to let your guard down. You don't want to be in a marriage where it feels like you're always walking on eggshells, right? You should feel like there's some freedom there. You should be able to be relaxed and safe. You should be able to make mistakes and have your spouse forgive you. But that doesn't mean it's okay to have a pattern of treating your spouse poorly. And I just love that because it is saying, am I delivering this in the right way, in the right tone?
Do I care about how I'm treating my spouse is what that is.
And a great internal question, which you ask often is, would I say these words to a friend or even to a stranger? In other words, as I'm saying these words, and we know when we're going to say something that's going to light the place on fire, right? We just know it, but we just don't often pause and go, are these words going to be helpful or harmful?
Yeah.
It's that whole going back to Ephesians 4 where Paul talks about let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only as such as good as for building up, as fits the occasion, that it might give grace to those who hear.
And again, there are people who are listening to this going, but I should be able to say what I want to say.
Right.
Okay. Yes. Maybe we should. Maybe we wish that was the way your spouse is wired and that marriage was created. But if it's not,
yeah.
How's that working for you?
That's right. That's right. So you ask a few internal questions, take that mental time out. And I think this is a good one. Just practice.
This is the second
Yeah, this is
thing.
the second thing. Practice being honest and kind.
Both of those things.
Because it is a practice. Like, it doesn't come naturally. Either for me, like, I don't always just tell it. So I need to practice being honest, and letting the words out. For those of you that are more verbal processors, expressors, and you haven't had a thought you haven't expressed, you might need to go, are these words being honest and kind?
Yes.
And so it goes back to Ephesians 4, which is a great passage for you just to read as a couple and just ask, are we doing this well? How's our diagnostic going? Paul goes on in Ephesians 4:15, rather speaking the truth. He doesn't just say speak the truth, which is what we should do, is speaking the truth in love. Tim Downs, who's one of our weekend member speakers who I love, he and his wife Joy have written a book called Fight Fair and just a lot of great resources. But he likes to talk about how the fact that whenever a company is making a new product and they've got creative ideas or creating this awesome product, it's great, they don't just put it on the shelf. Like, before the product ever gets created, they send the product to the marketing department. Mm-hmm. And the marketing department's job is to put the right packaging around to make it attractive, to have all the right words, the copy, all of that. And often what ends up happening is you spend more money on the packaging than you do the product.
Yep.
And so it's like, man, are my words going to the marketing department before they come out? And that's just a great analogy. And too often we just want to get the product out because that's what we think we should be able to do.
Well, too often we think, and I can guarantee you there's some people listening to this going, I shouldn't have to be marketing oriented with my spouse. This is where I should be safe. And again, just like that quote that you read from one of those highly happy wives is yes, but that doesn't give you an excuse to treat your spouse poorly as a pattern.
Let's stop using the word authenticity as an excuse for meanness.
Yes.
Great way of putting it. Really what you're saying right here with this.
Now, the good news, there is really good news here, though, is that even if this is a pattern, one of the things that we saw in our 30-day kindness challenge research is that people started. And what we told them, again, remember we said you can't say anything negative to your spouse or to your person who you're doing this for. And that included tone of voice. That included all the things that we're talking about, right? And so they had committed. And so you start day one, and having done the 30-day kindness challenge, I can tell you, you spend the first couple of days going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like, I had no idea how often I did this or said this or used that tone of voice. The good news that we found in almost everybody, really, it took about 3 or 4 days for that to shift.
Really?
Yes.
That's it.
It sounds crazy, and I need to make sure that I qualify this. It's not that you've built the new habit yet, but you've interrupted the old one. It takes about 3 or 4 days for that interruption to happen enough that you go, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to be this person. Like, because I'm tracking now every time I do this or say this or whatever. And so 3 or 4 days to interrupt that, and then you can start building the new habit.
Wow, that's good. And we've mentioned this now a couple times, so I want to make sure everybody that's listening or watching has an opportunity to go to the Kindness Challenge. It's out there. You've got it. It's at jointhekindnesschallenge.com. We'll put it in the show notes as well. But it really is 30 days to get to a new habit. And like you're saying, after 3 or 4 days, you've done enough of a pattern interrupt where it's like, this is how I practice,
Yeah.
I need to start practicing. And like we've said with a lot of these is for the first couple of days, it'll feel like dribbling with your left hand. It'll feel like it's not going to come natural, but being truthful, being honest and kind is a much better pattern that you'd have in your relationship.
And as Bruce, our producer, pointed out, one of the things that's good is that all these things we've been talking about, all these secrets of the happiest couples, they do build on one another. So now if you've been listening to these episodes in order, by now you hopefully will have already had that, oh my gosh, the oof over your head, right? And so hopefully by now you're seeing, okay, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
So when we think about these little steps going in the right direction, again, easy to implement or easy to do, They're not always easy to implement, would be a better way to say it. And so in the moment where you're starting to I want to be honest right now, just call a timeout and say, is this the right time? Is this the right tone? Am I being a dream killer here? Do I need to schedule that back and just say, hey, I'm excited actually about that. When could we talk about, how to make that happen?
Maybe I should talk about the Bahamas trip in a couple of days.
That's right. Because I've always had this dream. I wanted to watch Carolina play in the Thanksgiving week Maui Jim Wowie Invitational, which is like this big basketball thing. And I've always said, we're going to go do that one year. And Jen now just kind of go, that'll be great, Brian. That'll be awesome. Knowing that it probably won't happen because I've got to save up all these miles and money. But I still have the dream. Yeah. One day it's going to happen. And so just calling a timeout. How can I encourage in this moment? Are these words going to be helpful? Or are they going to be harmful? In that. And then secondly, to practice being honest and kind. And the last thing that I would say, and I'll close with this, is just in that moment, remember who you're married to. I think it's too often we forget the gift that God has given us and what it is our job that we get the opportunity to actually love somebody to being their more authentic version of Christ.
Yeah,
and
so
we
good.
do that with our words. And it reminds me of the story. I don't know whether it's true or not. I'm going to hope that it's true. I think that it's true.
It's a great story, though. Yeah.
Yeah. But back in the Renaissance days when there was all these artists that were trying to create these great works of art, whether it was Da Vinci, Michelangelo, you had all these great painters. They were rushing to do these kind of things and get them done and get them out for the people to enjoy. And there was this guild that had purchased this marble that had sat in the back of a church for like a decade. And it was starting to get, their investment was starting to lose money. They're like, we got to do something with this. And so they asked Da Vinci, like, would you please create something out of this marble? Look at it. It's great. It still has value.
Giant block of marble.
Yeah, big block of marble. And Da Vinci's like, it's not worth my time. It's not good enough, guys. So they gave it to another young sculptor. They gave him the commission. And then he almost drilled all the way through it and broke it in half. And so almost broke it in half. So they pulled him off the job. So this young Michelangelo, I think he was 26 at the time, he said, I'll do something with it. Just trust me. I'm not gonna break it. You're not gonna lose your money. I'm gonna create something out of this. And so he puts a tent around it and he stays in that tent for 30 days. And all he's doing is viewing it. He's looking at it. He's seeing all the unsightly veins. He's noticing that it favors and leans a certain way. He sees where that hole almost cracked it in half. After 30 days, he takes out his chisel, he takes out his hammer, and he starts whittling away. Because these artists at the time, they believed in this process called desengo. Desengo really meant that embedded in any image, whether it was wood, whether it was canvas, whether it was marble, was the image of God. And the job of the artist and the creator was to draw out that image, to whittle away the imperfections until that image of God was clear to be seen, whatever it might be.
Whatever God intended for that.
Whatever God intended for that.
That painting, that marble.
And so after 18 months, he drew back the curtains and he revealed what many would say is one of the most impressive works of art from the Renaissance days. You would know it as?
David.
That's right. The statue of David. And I just think how often that's a lot like we're married to somebody where we have the opportunity to come alongside God in the process of sanctification. And when you live with somebody long enough, you know the unsightly veins. You know the imperfections. You can't help but see their sinful flesh come out. And we have an opportunity to take out our hammer and chisel in the form of our tongue to either shape that and craft it into the image of God that was embedded in there, or to crush their spirit. A fool gives full vent to his anger, right? A wise man ponders his words. The angry man just pours them out. And I just think, it's like I could be for example, I'll just make it real. I could be at a party and we could be hanging out with a group of people and I could go in there and I'm more of an extrovert than Jen and I could be having fun and we can get in the car at night and she could say, you know what, Brian? I get so tired of those jokes you tell. You've told those things 15 times and people only laugh because they just want you to shut up. Now, is she saying the truth? Probably. Because I probably do that. Or we could get in the car and she could go, you know what, Brian? I've lived with you long enough to know that there's a little blinker in your heart of insecurity. And sometimes that causes you to try to do things to impress people. And I just want you to know that when you feel that, I want you to hear my voice in the back of your head going, you don't need to impress anybody. You're already impressive enough. Now,
two different things.
Saying the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Just one's brutal and one's speaking the truth in love. And I tear up because I feel like Jen has learned that.
Yep.
You know, I feel like I've tried to learn that. And I feel like she's done a much better job of that, of just going, my job, my role in this marriage, as every spouse is, I get to help craft the image of God in my spouse. And my tongue will either crush that image or it could craft that image. And what I love about this secret is that highly happy couples have learned that they're honest, but they don't have to be brutal. So thanks, Shaunti, for backing that up. And if you want practice in that, join thekindnesschallenge.com. It'll be in the show notes, and just watch what God does in your marriage. Thanks for joining us for this episode. If you enjoy this podcast, please hit like or subscribe. And please leave a review or a comment. It just helps get the word out to more couples so that they could find hope for their own marriage. And listen, if you haven't picked up Shaunti's book that we're talking about all this season long, The Surprising Secrets of Highly Happy Marriages, you're going to want to get that and maybe grab one to give away, because that's really what we're about here at Family Life. We want to help you experience oneness so that you could impact your corner of the world. And listen, we've got a lot more help and hope for your marriage and family at FamilyLife.com. You can find other articles, you can find podcasts, you can find shows, small group resources. You'll want to check that out at FamilyLife.com.